Our journey begins. It's day 14, June 14, 2024, and I'm going to try to do a little bit of a summary of the findings from the past day 1 through 13, as well as trying to draw the main insights that we've gathered the last couple days in particular. So here's a little screenshot of all the videos that we've done so far, including day 1, the moment our journey begins, day 2, the problems in current reality, day 3, the ways to solve the problems in reality. Day 4, why to solve the problems in reality. Day 5, how to get started solving the problems in reality. This is becoming the best version of yourself. Day 6 is one person can make a difference. And I kind of go through, like, if we take out the emotionalness of it, like, one person can actually make a difference. And I go through some examples in history. And then we have day 7, the power of humor to change the world. We have day 8, what are my goals exactly? And day 9, the map that shows us how we can make a difference. Basically, how can one person make a difference? So that's kind of, we can kind of skip it to, over here. So this was day 9, how can one person make a difference? We went through, like, the different ways that the world's problems could be potentially solved. And from that finding, we figured out that for the most part, the main way we think will be a self-organizing movement of people, and becoming the force by which things actually change. That was the main finding. Then we started to go down, like, what would that be, why and how can any one person influence kind of the movement. And then we went into day 10, which we talked about sort of what is the movement, what does it mean to be a member, starting to get into some of the self-organizing principles of different things. Then we got into day 11, talking through how would you maintain individuality and some more, like, principles, trying to really nail down, like, what exactly would be the movement in this case. And then day 12, we dug into more principles of the movement, and we figured out that you wouldn't necessarily need a physical location. You could still maintain individuality. And then day 13, where we talked about how exactly you would create a coordinated system. So that is the summary. So I'm going to try to find the key insights and questions still unanswered. So I'm just going to get every question that's still kind of we're not totally sure about. Are we okay with this? There's a couple different ways of solving the world's problems in a meaningful way. AI and tech bring about abundance. See, I think the main thing for me with this is that one cannot depend on this happening. Be forced to depend on this happening, and could any one person make a difference in this scenario without principles from the movement? This is why, like, a lot of people talk about, oh, like, when we have abundance, a lot of the problems will be solved or whatever. But for me, it's like, well, not really. Then we have any one single smart person. Again, you're depending on one smart person or one AI robot to do everything else. any one individual person should not have to depend on one other person. Like, you'd want to depend on a society, basically. Like, more people, essentially. So then, to me, the most obvious way any one person can make a difference is the self-organizing movement of people trying to make a difference that encompasses all other ideas, ways things actually could happen. So how can one person influence the movement starting? They get on board and support. They become part of the mechanism. They do their part. It feels like they're just saying to be a cog in the wheel. Not necessarily. But also, how is this idea any different from the idea of society? Like, typically we say, is someone making a difference in society? Is someone contributing to society? And then society is supposed to be that self-organizing system. However, yeah, I do have a couple thoughts on that. Let's just go down here. What's the difference? Current society is extremely inefficient. Society is extremely inefficient. It's extremely inefficient and held in what's the right word for held in like a state of balance by forces such as economy and government, whereas the movement it's mostly just like extremely inefficient. That's like the main issue. And current society is not necessarily coordinating together explicitly for everyone's benefit. And so the main difference would be that this would movement would be an explicit, transparent way of meaningfully connecting people into a self-organizing system that is working towards everyone's best goals. So is the insight here that you have to kind of create a new society? Are we basically creating instead instead of the economy and status games, it would be self-organizing towards the best possible future for everyone. That does seem to be an insight. It's very possible. Okay. So, indeed, how can anyone else or me do something? I can help develop the start of it, and by default, anyone that's a part of it will be an instrumental part of achieving success. Hold up. Anyone involved in the movement plays an instrumental role in its success through the extreme coordination of all members. Like basically the resource allocation, I better write these down. Resource allocation. I've been wanting to try that one out for a while. Resource allocation. And anyone involved in the movement plays an instrumental role. Like timelines, dependencies, sort of the butterfly analogy, where the network Okay. Now, what's this? Yeah, that was just an acknowledgement that it's possible for one person to make a difference. Okay. Then, what are these? Those are some ideas. These are some ideas on how to create a self-organizing system. I don't know. I think it's slightly different. I think we kind of answered that. Freedom versus individuality. Again, I think we answered that. Let me just this down here. Which we did kind of get to that here. So, yeah, I mean, I just don't know if that's feasible. That you have such high coordination that everyone's efforts, no matter what they're shooting for, can make an impact. Like, how would you even... Like, I could understand how that's potentially possible if everyone's desires are decent and they're all their best selves. But yeah, most people are not their best selves. So that would probably be like a major part of the movement, is every person being their best self. Yeah, I would say individuality and freedom works if everyone is their best self, is constantly working to become their best self. Because then by default, the other thing is, like, it might not take that much. This would be a result of efficiency gains and coordination and abundance, etc. Having to dedicate okay. So that kind of makes sense. But how in practice would you say, okay, are you actively working towards becoming your best self? Because if you're not, then you can't be in the movement. And when you're in the movement, you get all these benefits. So everyone's going to want to say that they're in the movement. But how would you know if they're working towards the best version of themselves without some sort of fruits or some sort of tracking? But then you don't want to be like tracking everyone's progress. It would have to be that in order to be in the movement, you would have to contribute something. I think that would have to be how it works. Okay. Separation of people is by default. Yeah, you're likely going to get people like people that don't want to make a difference. They're going to be people not in the movement. So we're going to be recruiting people not in the movement, right? Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think by default, movement should not have to be a monopolistic. It's not like it has to be an entirely like, it's just like basically a donation fund where everyone contributes and this donation fund just makes things happen. Maybe we can get rid of the donation fund when it's all done. And the donation fund isn't necessarily like a completely controlling thing. It's just there for the time and place that it needed to be in order to make a difference. People were willing to help out basically and to coordinate together. And then after that, maybe we figure out some other way. Maybe one person doesn't need to change the world at that point, and everyone can just live in the world, live their own values. But until that point, we have to figure out how we can actually make the world such that you can live your own values. Yeah, so you would verify this by... No, I think we could verify it with contribution, willingness to contribute meaningfully. That's kind of all that you need, is someone, like, even if they're doing, like, if they're contributing, then it's a synergistic game. So even if they contribute a little bit, they can still get a lot of benefit. I do think perhaps contributions may need to be weighted with benefits. Because otherwise, I do think there's a sense of like standard economic policy. So supply and demand, like that sort of thing, should still be maintained for sake of efficiency and everything. So how is it built, and how does it grow, and how does it evolve? Those questions still have. Okay. Yeah. What is the best possible future? That is definitely true. We need to figure that out. I think we answered that one. Okay. How would the leadership work? How would physical locations work? How would how would you, like, how exactly would they contribute, and like what way would you need contributions? What is the currency? And I may need to think through the ecosystem thinking more. I mean, yeah, this one kind of thought through it already, but like, it's a tough question. Okay. I think that it all makes sense. So we did get some pretty far. Basically, we figured out that if we can figure out these things, how would the movement be built, and how would it grow? How would it evolve? And determine the actual best vision that we're going for initially. How you would handle leadership, how you would imply physical locations and currency, and then individual contributions, how those would be weighted with the benefits, and how to actually coordinate all of that, and then that kind of is in relation to that idea. So that all makes sense. If one person can live their best life, so the main goal is that everyone has the ability to live their best life. How do you create a world like that? We create because any one person, it would be really, really difficult for any one person to make a world like that. It would be very difficult for any one person to make a world where everyone can live their best possible life. It's possible, but you wouldn't want to depend on that. So the most probable way in which a world like that could exist would be if there was a force which created that world. That force was through the efforts of millions, billions of people in coordination. In this way, it can take place quickly, efficiency in numbers, and every single person that is involved by default will be trying to live their best life, which is basically the end goal, regardless. So basically, so the movement allows every person if they want to not only change the world and truly make a difference, but also simultaneously live their best possible life at that time, which probably involves making sacrifices, being selfless, and caring about other people. Wow, that is key, which implies that the main thing I think that needs to happen, well, there's all of that stuff, but I was just thinking how, like, becoming the best version of yourself is going to be, like, the main movement that needs to start. Which people have been saying that for a long, long time. It's just not, it's not been coordinated. Okay? That's been, that I'm feeling good about this. It may just be that my brain came up with all this stuff and thinks, oh yeah, now we're closer to figuring out the answer. But I do feel like doing this, you can go back and you can look at what things you didn't answer. You can actually, like, see your mental progress, because this is almost like a mental mind map. It's not the most organized, but then you can get down to here, like, yeah, like it could actually work. Basically, you're shifting the way society works away from what society basically happened to evolve into, to something that you actually want society to be. And that's basically all you need is a society that actually, and it doesn't even have to be like an entirely encompassing societal thing. It can just be like this thing that people dedicate like 8 hours a week towards, and they spend 8 hours, and they contribute in some fashion, and because of the efficiency and the synergy of that whole system, they can get enough benefit to maybe buy food or to maybe do all the other stuff. And as long as it's not in any one person's control, and you've figured out sort of the governing structures, it could work out in a positive way. And then you can trend away towards nationalism and geopolitics and like all of the other things that just constantly get in the way of actually improving the world in a good way where everyone feels good about it and everyone's not constantly worried about bad people taking over. So how would you deal with bad people? How would you deal with explicit bad people? That is a question. So, all right, it's been day 14. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Excited to keep going. I'll see you tomorrow.